never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Because you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Because you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us.
Isn't it the best feeling to be chosen? Like somebody wants you. I remember when I felt the most unchosen. It was in high school and I was on drugs. I never went to school. I had become this huge failure to my school and my family. I was running away from home all the time and telling them, I don't want to be your kid anymore. I don't like you. You're terrible. And it was at that time when my school came to my parents and they said, we don't want her. Take her. We can't handle her. And I thought in my heart that my parents were going to say the same thing back to the school. They were going to say, we don't want her either. You take her. And at that moment, I felt the most unloved and unwanted that I ever had. But later, I found out actually that at that moment, when I was being the most cruel to my dad, that he went to my school behind my back and he said, I love my daughter so much, I will do whatever it takes to see her graduate from this grade, because they were trying to kick me out from that grade, so I'd have to go back another grade. And when I learned that, I felt so loved, because it wasn't like I was being loved because of anything good I had done, but in my lowest moment, my dad came and said, she's my daughter, I love her, I'll do whatever it takes. And the Bible says that that's exactly what God did for us. At the moment that we were at our lowest is when he chose us. Imagine the time when you had done the worst thing you could think of and stay there. The Bible says that it was at that moment that God sent Jesus to die for you, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So this proves God's love. And I want you to imagine using this baby, that this is you. I know maybe it's a stretch, but imagine that this baby's you and you're in an orphanage and you've seen all these other parents come and pass you by. And maybe you have some, or you feel like you have some special defect or just unwanted for whatever reason. All these people pass you by. That's how we feel inside with our hearts, that people have passed us by because of some defect. But then God comes and he's like the richest parent that comes into the orphanage, and he comes in and pretend that this fur coat demonstrates like his love, and really it demonstrates him giving up his own son, Jesus. And he looks at you, and out of all the babies, and he says, I want that one. Even though maybe that baby isn't perfect, even though I don't know the baby's parents and the baby could have, I don't know, health problems down the road, or maybe even though the baby's crying and is kind of dirty and no one's cleaned it yet, the Bible says that God looks at us in that moment and says, I want that baby. And he came with his fur coat of his love, and even like pretend the baby is just like a baby when it's born. It's dirty and not washed yet, and he wraps that baby in his own love, and he takes that baby home. And this is you. This is what God has done when he sent his son Jesus to die for you. He wrapped you in his love with the most expensive thing, his son, that he had to give. And so I want you to know that if anything happens in life from this point on, because God's going to take you home and you're going to grow up in his house, and maybe you feel like, well, will God leave me if I do something wrong? Or what if I'm not perfect? Well, God chose you at the time when you weren't perfect. And he gave you the thing that was closest to his heart, his son. And so if anyone ever tries to come and take that coat off of you, or if you think, I'm not worthy of this coat, God's going to say, I gave you this coat myself, and I'm never going to take it back. Just like my dad went to bat for me when I was at my lowest, God will go to bat for you until the end of time. He will never let you go once he's put the sacrifice of his son Jesus on you.
Tony, what are your thoughts on helping women overcome shame?
Wow, that's a big question. Women are harder on themselves in this area than men are by far. I think it has to do with cultural conditioning more than anything else.
Being the good girl.
That's exactly right. And yet, for you to feel alive, that passionate part of you has to feel alive.
Right.
So it's this fight. I think the best way to deal with shame for people is to find what you're most proud of. You're never going to deal with shame. You have to overwhelm it with the good. It's kind of like if every day of your life you look around and you let it happen, news comes in, and it's almost always these days something to scare you. If it bleeds, it leads, they say in the newspaper business, right?
Right.
So something to jar you. If you're going to have your life, you have to what I call stack the good. You have to flood yourself with the good. You have to say, what am I proud of in my life? What am I grateful for? And you've got to literally think of 3 or 4 or 5 things, people, experiences. It could be something little you're proud of when you're a kid, something today. But if you do what I call an emotional flood, where you flood yourself with all the beautiful, proud things you're grateful for in your life, you'll find that'll overwhelm that feeling of shame, and the shame feeling will disappear. But it won't disappear by analyzing it.
Right.